What is going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. It's time to talk spoilers on Cobra Kai Season 4. So, just like this time, around this time last year, we got me and Uncle Shawnzy over here talking about Cobra Kai. We are the local Cobra Kai fanatics in our little circle of the world, and also Karate Kid fanatics. So, we got a lot of different passionate thoughts. We were close to the same reception of season 3. I think I was more negative on it than Sean, and we've been talking a lot behind the scenes about Cobra Kai season 4. Both of us enjoying quite a bit what we got out of this season. And now we get to talk about all the nitty gritty, everything going on with Terry Silver, everything with the All Valley tournament, where things are going to be going in the future, which apparently they have plans all the way through to season 6, potentially onward. So hello, everybody. We already got 61 viewing. Please make sure, even though I have it in the thumbnail and I have it down here, make sure you have seen season 4 before you join this. It's a very easy watch, and it's surprisingly so easy to continuously rewatch and re-binge. I talked to Sean before we both got our screeners for season 4, and I was like, "Yeah, have you started yet?" And he's like, "No, I'm already kind of halfway through season 1 doing my rewatch." And I remember I thought, God, do I want to watch all 3 seasons again before I watch this? And before I knew it, I had done it. It just felt like 2 days. I'm like, oh, I'm done. Cool.
It is such a watchable show that's very easy to consume, put on.
Just flies by.
That just goes by very quickly. And every episode ends and makes you go, I want another one. I want keep going. So and having rewatched it every time a new season is dropped, and usually 2 times. I've rewatched it 2 times because my daughter's getting involved in the process now. So, every time I'm like, I am fine to keep watching.
Yeah, my kids have done that too, to where I'll get screeners and I'll be watching it, and then I'll come downstairs randomly one day and they're on like another random episode before where I'm at, and I'm like, what? Hang on, I like this part. And you just kind of sit there and watch it, and then you're like 3 episodes deep again. So we'll start
the other
off
thing
talking...
we've been doing, Chloe and I, has been playing the Cobra Kai video game to hear the rest of what was going on during, I guess, season 2 of the show. Apparently, there was a lot of crazy stuff, and everyone has superpowers. Actually, I don't know why they don't use their superpowers on the show, but like Daniel can shoot ice out of his hands, which I was hoping would show up in season 4, but they didn't do it yet. But you can definitely shoot ice from his hands and ice walls from the ground. He's actually Sub-Zero. If you're wondering who's behind the hood, it's Daniel.
That's the hidden secret of Miyagi-Do method right there. Now I'm extremely disappointed. Now if they don't get there by season 6, to hell with the show. What are you doing?
And now I understand also why we need more seasons to show when they got their powers, how they got their powers, and how they use their powers.
Exactly. Man, it all makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
So we'll start talking about our expectations for season 4, because even though you were a lot more positive on season 3 than me, I think we both kind of landed in the same boat as far as where we wanted or where we hoped things would be going in season 4. Yeah. So what were your kind of hopes or expectations, or maybe even worries for the season before you click play on the first episode?
So the worry was that it felt like everything was coming together. If you look at the character arcs of the first 3 seasons, as well as the franchise going back decades, the fact that Daniel and Johnny are coming together to partner up to train for the tournament, to battle Cobra Kai, to defeat Cobra Kai, that feels like a logical conclusion to everything that's been built before. And so then when they set that up at the end of season 3 and then said, also, we're doing 3 more seasons, that just felt like, what are we doing here? Like we're going on too long. Like, you have a clear ending. You have an idea that like that's one that makes sense. And then you're just taking way too long to get there. That was the fear. And it's a interesting frustration, because on the one hand, it's like, yeah, this is exactly where all this is building towards. But what am I going to feel when this isn't the end? That's kind of what I was thinking going into it, of Terry Silver showing up, seems great. Competing dojos, partnerships, all that excited about. The fear is, will the end work, and will it feel like it's stretching it out?
Yeah, absolutely. My main 2 worries was exactly what you just said. That was the main one. It was like, this feels like the series finale. You're already telling me you've got 1 season about in the can, plans for 1 or 2 more. And get to forgive me, and probably you as well. I'm extremely guarded as a fan of Dexter, because that's kind of the ultimate example for me of a show that had a great thing going, but just rode the ratings instead of actually planning out and mapping out an end game, a la something like Breaking Bad, where they ended it on top of the ratings and just carried the
1
show
week
out
apart. That which probably the thing that we're Trickster so bad is that like what right there we saw a perfect example of like, no, we're not going to stretch this out. We're going to end when the story ends, and then 1 week apart, Dexter being like, we, however, are going to go the opposite direction.
Yep, that did not do them any favors. So yeah, all I saw was the writing on the wall of them potentially taking the show until the quality dipped and then deciding to end it. The other worry that I had is because one of my favorite elements of the show thus far has been the moments where Daniel and Johnny have actually gotten along and had dinner, the double date, stuff like that. And it always was frustrating that
always stands out of the seasons of when they're like, hey, they get along.
Yes, exactly. And there was always like just the tiniest little disagreement that would rip them back apart. And so my fear was that season 3 was going to build up all this stuff. You got Phil Collins and everything playing in the background, and then halfway through the first episode, they're going to hate each other again. Yeah. And so that was the other worry that I had, was like, please don't do that. We've been there for 3 seasons plus the previous movies. So I clicked play, and moving into kind of overall thoughts quickly of the season, I texted you about 2/3 of the way through the second episode, and I was like, are you watching it yet? And it was right about the point where they were at the hockey game, and Danny does Eagle Fang stuff to take care of the bullies, and Johnny does the Miyagi-Do thing of no, be there. And so I was just like, I love this. I love what they're doing. Like, they're still disagreeing, but it's like it works. And despite the fact that in those same 2 episodes there was a couple character motivations with Hawk and with Robbie seeming like they needed them to be a certain way for one scene that made no sense, we quickly got through all that. I really loved all of the character dynamics and all the way that they developed the characters and the relationships in season 4, whether it be between Johnny and Daniel, whether it be between Robbie and Tori, whether it be between Miguel and Sam's relationship, even these new characters that they brought in that we'll talk about. Well, one new character and one character that has always been just kind of a background noise. And by the end of the season, my biggest worry being, am I going to get to the last episode and say, why is this still going? You should have ended it. What the hell are you doing? It ended, and I went, yes, I need more. I need to know the answers to these things. And it makes sense if you're heading the direction I think you're heading, why you decided not to stop here.
Yeah, and I don't recall. I think you said you had the same experience, but I miscounted the number of episodes, and there's 2 about the tournament. So you get to the end of the last episode, Miguel's back snaps. Every plot is still dangling. Miguel and Johnny just had a disagreement. Robbie just beat up a middle schooler. Like, everything is dangling. I thought that was the end of the season. I thought that was the cliffhanger.
I did too. I visibly, dude, like that happened. His back snap. It's like this big epic moment where it's cutting between his dreams, and he's doing the tornado kick, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be this huge over the top snap. What? And he's screaming, Sensei! And then it cuts to black. I was like, I knew you were going to screw it up. Why? Oh, there's more.
Yeah, we got one more. It's okay. Yeah, so for me, by the end of the season, or throughout the whole season, I wasn't really thinking about my concerns at all. I wasn't spending any of the season like, oh man, where are we gonna? I know we're gonna stretch this. Like, my brain didn't go there at all while watching it.
Same.
And that's a really good sign. Like, when I go into it. For a year, me and you have both been publicly saying, man, I don't know about this. I said my trailer reaction a month ago, I don't know about this. And then I watched it and I never went, I don't know about this. It never crossed my mind. And you get to the end of it and it felt like made sense. It was satisfying. It was the right direction for all these characters at that moment. I think the concern still stands of you have to see what they do the next 2 seasons to know, oh crap, should you have ended it here? Or do you have 2 more seasons of development? Will next season just feel like the middle filler season where it's like, okay, well, we don't have another tournament at the end of this one, so we have another year of like, kind of, they have some of these drip, season 2 and even a little season 3 where there's kind of this wandering a little bit, like more stuff that we like, but there's not a clear focus. But I mean, I would say without question, easily, this is my second favorite season behind the first one. Like, no question. That was like immediately. I don't know if it would be possible to top the first season for me because it was such a pleasant surprise, and just the rich source material of like when you're telling that first story, those are always going to probably resonate on a deeper level with me with this type of story. But beyond that, I mean, this season I felt was about as good as it could have been. They always have kind of some overcooked drama. They always have a little bit of characters changing based off what the scene requires. There's always times where the teenage politics can be a little bit much for me. Like, oh, you dummies, stop overreacting to everything. It always has some of that.
Yeah.
But like, it was about as good as it could be. And I mean, I watched it twice. I watched it once and then immediately started watching it again and writing notes and everything. And even the video that I shot and will post later today is my ranking of all the episodes. And I was like, I even said it, and I was like, there's no bad episodes. There's no filler episodes. The one at the bottom is really good. And by the time I got to number 5, I like talked to it. I was like, did this happen? This happened. This happened. It was awesome. It was great. And this happened. I was like, wait, why is this number 5? How is this number 5 on this? This was awesome. That's a really good sign. That's the way I feel about this show. Like I really could nitpick a bunch of specific things about almost every episode about criticisms. But at the end of the day, how did it make me feel? How excited was I about it? And do I want to watch it again? Am I excited for more? All of those are true.
Cobra Kai has done a great job. And something that you very, very, very rarely see as a success for a show or a movie at appealing to everybody. It appeals to the nostalgia side of people our age or older.
Yeah.
It appeals to kids that maybe just started watching Cobra Kai, like my kids. You know, like my son knew what Karate Kid was. My daughter didn't, but she's just as invested in Cobra Kai as my son. And so they do a good job at appealing to everybody when oftentimes when a show or a movie tries to appeal to everybody, they end up appealing to no one.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the teenage melodrama would turn us off. The nostalgia stuff that they have no idea what any of that means would turn the younger generation off. But they've just done a genius way of kind of molding all of that together and developing all of it kind of at once, at one pace.
Right.
To where,
in a way that I don't even understand how it does it.
Yeah,
like,
same.
Like the reason that me and you are excited about this show, and then all these kind of, a lot of people, me and you both kind of interact with in our DMs and comment sections that are just, they're high schoolers that love the show and they love the teenagers. And then my 7-year-old daughter, I don't even know what she's getting at. Covering her ears, like, what do you, and everybody kind of loves it for a different reason. And like all this stuff that's like, Terry Silver shows up that's like, dude, it's not like Karate Kid 3 is a movie that generally speaking is popular among the masses. It's a, one of those sequels that is very heavily used as an example of like the worst and picking on it. And everyone was thrilled. Terry Silver's coming back. And that's what's so strange about that, the power that it has of like having such broad appeal and working on so many levels for so many different people, being so fan servicey when a huge chunk of the audience doesn't care about, like, doesn't know who these people are. It's, I can't think of another show remotely like this in the way that it connects with people.
Exactly. And to that point, I was actually, before we went live, just kind of going through on YouTube, and I saw an interview that Entertainment Weekly did with Thomas Ian Griffith, just as the season aired. He's the guy that played Terry Silver, for anybody that didn't know that. And he even himself, like, she's like, hey, how'd you get introduced to the show? Were they always in contact? Or they just randomly call you? And he's like, I've been a fan of the show from the beginning. Like, I've loved what they've done. And even me, like, and my legacy with this franchise, I never saw a place for Terry Silver in this show. It just never made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so they called me, and I'm like, guys, like, you got a good thing going. Like, this character doesn't make any sense for what you're trying to do. And then they told him their plans for what he's been doing for the past 30 years and where we're going to find him and what his journey is going to be. And he's like, oh my God, yes, sign me up now. And that's a perfect example, because I'm somebody who unabashedly loves Karate Kid 3 for all of its flaws. That might be the one that I watch the most, and I've always defended it, even though I understand why people don't like it. But
I'm probably even more critical on it than you, a lot more critical on it than you are. It's the one that I put on the most.
Oh, okay.
I've watched it like 3 times in the last month because it's the one that it's just easiest to just put on.
Yeah.
And it has an energy to it that's just kind of fun. But like I'm more critical of it than you are. But
yeah, and so that being said, I've always wanted Terry Silver to come back because I've even liked Thomas Ian Griffith and other things. He was in a John Carpenter
Vampires,
movie,
yeah.
and so I always thought that there was a place for him because the show has also done a good job at always being a little campy, a little hokey, but always being right at the line or just barely tiptoeing over it, never going full on ridiculous. Like one of my least favorite individual scenes of this season is Johnny trying to get a bunch of teenagers to jump across a rooftop. And I was just like, dude, like Daniel literally deserves to kick the living shit out of you for that. Like you're telling these teenagers to jump possibly to their death with no concern whatsoever. But it works. For some reason, like your initial thought, you're like, that's stupid. And then you just move on past it. And then you just watch it and it doesn't take you out of the show at all.
Did I lose you or did you lose me?
I'm just fine. I hear you.
Okay, you locked up on my end for about 15 seconds there.
Uh-oh.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
anyway.
I bumped the thing where my Ethernet cable's plugged in, and it doesn't snap in very well. So it might have been my fault. I was laughing too hard and hit my desk. And
well, I was just saying, like even at its most ridiculous moments like that, where a grown man is telling teenagers to potentially jump to their death with no concern for their life, you think about it for about a second and then you just move on.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, this episode's garbage. Like this season's already kind of tailing. None of that.
Well, and the thing that we've talked about before, also of the legality of so much of this, of like, of course, the police should be very involved in all of this. That would resolve everything.
We can't call the cops. We're going to resolve this at the tournament in a year.
Right. The show's able to make you kind of buy into this, and it was always kind of baked into the cake. Even Karate Kid 3, a band of expert karate people are like beating up Daniel, threatening to dangle him off a cliff if he doesn't sign up for a karate tournament and he doesn't go to the police. Like that's always kind of been baked into the cake for all of this. But that's another one of those areas where this show just somehow manages to find this very strange sweet spot of like the Venn diagram of like campy, over the top, goofy, and taking the material seriously. And even the way that it combines the two is interesting because Terry Silver's the most ridiculous thing about the original trilogy. Just so over the top, overcooked. And then that you bring him into this show that is itself this over the top, overcooked version of Karate Kid. And then they make him so much more balanced, even, nuanced, and the voice of reason, even reframing our context of what he was like. Oh, he was out of his mind on cocaine, and it was
one
the 80s.
line.
One line like makes everything
make so much
everything. And you hear it and you go, yeah, okay, that's been the joke. That of course this guy whacked out of his mind on cocaine. Oh yeah, he was. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, of course he's cackling like that.
It's so awesome.
But it just finds that way to balance it.
Yeah, I laughed so hard at that scene because I love the character. For all of his flaws, he's always been my favorite of the Karate Kid villains. And when he said that, he's like, back in the 80s, like I was so hopped up on cocaine that I was dedicating my entire life to this high school karate tournament. Good. And it's like, yes, exactly.
It's like I was harassing a high schooler for 2 months. That's crazy.
Exactly. Oh man. 2 quick super chats. We got Doppelganger. Hey Cody and Sean, great to see both of you in a stream together. What do you think would be a proper send-off of Daniel and Johnny at the end? I mean, clearly the end game is going to be to wipe Cobra Kai out completely forever. So it's going to be them high-fiving for doing that at this point. I would have thought it would have been them teaming up to just win the tournament, but it seems like it's going to go deeper than that. Would you disagree?
I mean, I think that's where the logical conclusion is. Like, they've already established they have a respect for each other. This season showed them understanding, like, wait, my way's not the right way. And so then you defeat Cobra Kai, and they've laid all the foundation for what a pretty safe, easy, satisfying conclusion of is that these guys are friends. And they always have a tension. They always have a certain conflict with each other, but they just have a mutual respect, and they've accomplished something together by not trying to get the other person to see things their way, but learning from the other person and working together. This season, very much so. Like, everything built up to this season, and then them trying to work together, you realize the lesson they need to learn is the one that the kids already learned, which is my way's not the right way. My way was right for me.
Yes.
and let's work together and get the best from each other. And that was the most fun moments between the two of them in the season, of the two of them learning from each other.
Absolutely.
Was so satisfying and great, but then the other stuff got into it that kind of broke them up. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the logical one, and not falling for the Cobra Kai mind games. Even like we talked about, our concerns about them breaking up too early in the season, the way they played out, it's the Cobra Kai mind games and the little things that's kind of what plants that seed, which eventually pulls them apart, besides their own egos and what they need to learn. But anyway.
Absolutely. JDev TV, thank you for the super chat. It was a great season, and I really like Tori now. We will get into that because we both have big thoughts on Tori. Sean, my nose also itches when I do videos, so you're not the only one. Mine does as well. And I get irritated. I have to make jokes about it. I'm like, I promise I don't do cocaine. It's just something's going on.
I'm not promising I don't do cocaine, but that's not why my nose is itching.
Oh, Lord. Oh, great. Here we go. John Sutherland, $10. Happy New Year, gentlemen. I love this season. Possibly my favorite. My only fear is they start going fast and furious. If Chosen is parachuting to stop a Cobra Kai tank by season 7, I'm out.
Well, that's where me and you disagree, because what you just proposed sounds like the greatest thing I've ever heard of.
Absolutely. So we'll get into now the individual characters and everything of the season. We'll start talking about Johnny and Daniel. I'm going to let you lead because I have to change something about the stream really quick so that we're not harassed. And you go ahead.
What am I talking about again?
Johnny and Daniel. So they're kind of their relationship this season, which you've already kind of opened up.
Touched on this just a little bit, so it's a nice smooth transition in. Them coming together is the culmination of the first 3 seasons as well as the 30-year franchise history. But what I thought then we both had that fear that they would break up too soon and it would just feel forced because it would just undo everything the last 3 seasons have been trying to do, bringing them together. And I felt that they did a really nice job of making it clear that their character flaws don't disappear just because they're trying to work together, and that the students already learned the lesson that they need to learn. From episode 1, both of their students understand we want to learn from each other. That's how we're going to do the best. But that's what 2 grown, stubborn men will take a lot longer to learn. And as much as they try and train each other, and that's so fun and satisfying, they still have their insecurities and their issues and their protectiveness of the people they care about. And so I just thought that was really nice that they should put a character flaw, a personal vulnerability, their concern for that person they care about the most, Miguel and Sam. And then when they're feeling that tension, they bring in then Silver and Kreese to be that final piece that pushes Daniel over the line to say something that's a ridiculous, like, obviously Johnny's not going to respond well to being told, no, you just have to like serve me and join me. We'll do it my way. That's of course not going to go well. And Johnny's not going to respond in a more reasonable fashion. And both of them are going to overreact because that's what they do. And I just thought that was handled really nicely. And by the time you get to the tournament and Sam starts winning because she was secretly learning from Johnny, and that's kind of the piece that snaps Daniel out of it, is he's watching, like, Johnny watches almost his whole team get decimated, and he was like, okay, what did I do? And then Daniel seeing his own daughter win because she learned from his enemy, and they finally learned the lesson at the very end that they needed. I thought that was just thematically as well as plot-wise, it ties it together really well and feels like a satisfying, compelling journey for both of them to be on. And so many great moments between the two of them. Them training each other in episode 2, of course you love seeing that. Them fighting each other, having a proper rematch, and them responding differently at the day after their drunken night, where one of them's like, I'm not really going to do this, am I? And then it cuts to Johnny training to the music
Rocky
from Rocky 4, which it's the locations of Rocky 3 and the music of Rocky 4 combined, and then Ethan, bald eagles
tweeting,
drunk tweeting. It's everything that you want. And then, them slowly realizing afterwards of like, wait, we were stronger together and we blew it, and the kids told us that all the way at the beginning. They told us and we didn't listen, and that's why we lost. That is such a good journey. That is such a great way to handle the two of them coming together.
Yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of them together this season. Season two was probably or episode two is probably my favorite moments, which is when I messaged you whenever they were at
Yeah.
the hockey game after he's had Johnny doing all the boring side of things where he's centering himself and he's just like, this sucks, man. We're doing this tomorrow, and then all of a sudden it's like a rock music video, and he's punching away baseballs and walking across coals. It's such a ridiculously over the top kind of generalization of both ideologies that it's so fun to watch. But then even throughout the season, like where you see Johnny go and he confronts Terry and he confronts Kreese and he's using Miyagi-Do blocking and or even Daniel, later on, he's got a whole drama going on with his son that we'll get into. But yeah, seeing his daughter kind of getting pulled away, and we'll get into Sam, but I was kind of surprised that she was kind of the catalyst for a lot of that joining together, because like you said, from the beginning of the season, the kids already understood the big theme of the season, which was no way is the right way. Like my way's right for me, your way's right for you. We all have our own journey. And they even do a great thing in the last episode where they call back to a scene in Karate Kid 3, which didn't seem significant at the time, where he's like, my karate good for me, your karate good for you in time, or whatever he said. And it's like, wow, right there. That's season 4 in one line. And so
much of like what they like the way all these things pull together, and you realize it when you talk through it, but like Cobra Kai 1, like at a dark version of learning the lesson, which was Robbie stealing their playbook, so they learned the playbook. So they learned Miyagi-Do to defeat Miyagi-Do. And it was just like all these little things of like different perspectives, philosophical ideas that were planted over 30 years ago, and they pulled all of them together, combining it with character arcs, combining it with actual fights where you care about the outcome and the way the outcome plays out. I thought was like just all of that stuff coming together and tying that, like what happens in the fight, these two teenagers fighting and the reaction to the adults on the side. That's just like so well thought out. It was just, I thought just really nicely done, to where the looks on adults' faces watching something is the payoff of a character arc.
Absolutely. Moving on to a couple other adults, which this was my biggest thing that I was excited for season 4, of course, being everything that we just talked about with Karate Kid 3. But you got Kreese and you got Terry Silver. And I loved the way that they gave us exactly the Terry Silver that we wanted, while also giving us a lot of unexpected things with this character. Things that you would not exactly expect for him to be doing, or things that you would expect them to explore with him, to the point where the first time that we see him, I think it's the opening shot of the season, where he's doing that like Dracula thing where he's got the robe and he's doing the piano, and it gives that call that Kreese gave at the last episode of season 3, where he's like, hey, it's been a long time, and he just hangs up the phone and puts it down. And it was kind of like the lightsaber thing in Last Jedi, where he just throws the lightsaber after you've been waiting to see what's going to happen. But it worked. It just made sense. It's like, oh, he doesn't want anything to do with Kreese. He was his lapdog in the last movie. But the way that they developed that, where he's changed into this civil person that you could tell kind of put the lid on the psycho inside of him. And he's got like vegan friends and all this crazy stuff, and Kreese just shows up and does that little bit of manipulation, just plants a seed, just plants that little tiny seed and lets it grow into this evil tree inside of him. And the way that all throughout the season, Kreese, his growing insecurity about his grip on Cobra Kai, while showing probably more than any other season that his relationship with Johnny is a little bit more complicated than you would think. It's not just this manipulation complex where he just has to have the guy that was his biggest student back. There actually is kind of a father-son thing there that he doesn't really know how to decipher. And seeing Terry Silver just watch this throughout the season, to where he's kind of a reluctant companion. And then there's even a point where they go to the dojo, and you can tell that Terry legitimately is trying to apologize and trying to have like an actual dialogue with Daniel, but Daniel's not having it for understandable reasons. And then just continuously from there starts to become that old Terry Silver, where we got to manipulate people, and we're going to war, we're going to battle. And then even things where they had this simple little bet inside of the Cobra Kai dojo, like, I'll pick a person, you pick a person, whoever wins, we buy beers. And even just losing that just sets Kreese off, where he's like, you're my subordinate, you need to talk, you need to do whatever I do, fall in line. And seeing how that mental manipulation is just not working for Silver, to the point where you get to the end of the season and Kreese becomes the agent of his own downfall by opening Pandora's box with this psycho, by bringing him back into his life, by continuously berating him and shoving him down and bringing up his debt to him from Vietnam, to the point where Terry has this diabolical plan on how to get him out of the picture and take Cobra Kai for himself. I loved the unveil of that scene because they have Stingray return, which we'll talk about. Right. And they show him in the hospital, and I was like, oh, when's that going to come back into play? And I kind of forgot about it.
Right.
Until you get to that scene where he's talking to him about the weaknesses, and you see the cops pull up, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And it just sets the stage for everything, to where Terry Silver is just as, if not twice as evil as he was in Karate Kid 3. And now he has everything. He's got the money, the resources, the kid. He won. And everything that was going to be the horrible outcome of Karate Kid Part 3 is now the reality.
Yeah, I think I felt this plot line worked better on the rewatch. The first watch through, there's a lot more of like, I'm not really sure what's these character dynamics are kind of ill-defined. And like, is Terry just the whipping boy that's getting beaten down and that's what he's been all along? Like, what exactly is this? And like, is Terry the voice of reason, or is he crazy? Like, when you watch it the second time and you know where it's going, I think it played better for me. Because there's a few times, like when he's like drunk and beating someone to death, and then the next day they're at the tournament, it's like, what's going on here? And then when you know where this is headed, when you see what, like at this point in time, he's already headed down this other path that Kreese and the audience didn't know about. Oh, I see what's happening here. And you reinterpret each moment differently. But yeah, it was like the way they were able to take this crazy wild character and make him a much more nuanced person, portray him as this guy that has a dark side and spent 30 years trying to put that behind him. And you see him, and on the one hand, you want to like, oh, this guy is insufferable as this rich, snooty guy. And then at the same time, you're like, wait, you want the cocained out lunatic that attacks high schoolers instead of snooty guy drinking fancy foods and talking to his nerdy friends? Or you don't, but for the show you do. And you just like, you see also this adult version of what Kreese has been doing for decades to teenagers, which is finding these vulnerable people and winding them up and setting them loose. And then you see like, oh, that's kind of also what he's been doing with Terry this whole time, until he comes across someone that's more powerful than him and crazier than him and willing to go more extreme than him. And you're the reason that he's like you said, like that all of this happened is Kreese's fault. He got the crazy guy and he would not work with him. He had to try and make him submit. And it's also, they draw the comparisons in the show itself, but it plays very much like the Sith and the rule of two that are two in the Sith. There's the submissive one eventually always reach a point in time where they want to try to take out the one in power. And they really do that with the Cobra Kai of like, there it happened. He's trying to take him out, and he's talking about how he's going to bring his own person, and how maybe that's how Mike Barnes will come into the mix. And
most likely,
and you go, Mike Barnes will finally, 30 years later, get his payment for what he was promised back in 85 in the actual timeline. And but all that stuff's just really fascinating, of the dynamics of all of it, how it played out, and somehow they took this crazy character and made it work. It made it make sense.
Absolutely. Now I'm curious on your thoughts on the moments of like glimmers of redemption for John Kreese, because if I'm remembering correctly, you and I were kind of on the same page as far as the Vietnam flashbacks in season 3 not really working for you.
No,
that was the big goal of that, was to make him sympathetic, to give him that human side and show why he turned evil. To me, it didn't really work. I think just
Yeah.
not knowing was actually more interesting than whatever they gave in that. And so I'm curious how you
Yeah,
felt about.
I think like the stuff at him at the diner, I thought
Yeah.
worked. When this show tried to like be like, we're in Vietnam, I was like, you're not in Vietnam. This is the believability factor. That's the key one.
Yeah.
And taking something like Vietnam where real people died, and then we're like, it's Mortal Kombat. We're on a bridge fighting over snakes with fatalities. Like, oh dear, like this is not the. This is not the right direction to take to take this. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I don't know where you're going with that, but that was my take on it.
There was moments in season 4 where they tried to give him these moments of redemption. Like whenever Terry Silver lures Johnny to the original dojo and he's beating him to a pulp and he's like, come on, John, join in. This is what you wanted. And he's like, no, stop. This isn't what I wanted. And even when you get to the actual All Valley, to where Johnny has that confrontation with him at some point in the season, and he starts to kind of hear that voice in his head again when Tori is being told to cheat. When he's doing that thing, you know, he ran into your elbow, just do it again and you'll win. And, you know, us not knowing that he's already paid the guy off, so she could probably stab Samantha and still win. But she's telling her to cheat, and Kreese, the only time that we've ever seen him do this, tells her, no, do it your way. Yeah. Don't do the dirty, vicious way. And so I'm curious what you felt on that, because I thought they were nice moments, but if I'm being completely honest, like I love the character of Kreese. He's a great 80s bad guy, and I think he's been really well in the show, and I like Martin Cove, but he's a very one-note villain to me.
Right.
Where he's always got one motivation, one way of delivering lines, and it just never really seems like he gets swayed a whole lot. So I like the moments, but unless they have a lot more in store for season 5 now that he's in prison, or presumably will be in prison, I don't really know if that's enough for me.
Yeah, well, this kind of goes back to what I said about the character motivations with him and Terry kind of having a strange dynamic that played a little bit better on the second viewing. But there was a little bit of like half the season, Kreese is like telling Silver, stop saying mercy, stop saying delay, we strike first. And then you reach a moment where it switches, and it didn't feel entirely balanced. Like the transition didn't fully play out. And I thought it played a little bit better when you perceive of it of you have a moment where for the first time ever Kreese cares about the person that's being beaten by the Cobra Kai bullying. He doesn't care about anyone else in the last 35 years. He didn't care about any of the other teenagers getting picked on, but he does care about Johnny. And so finally he sees the dark side of Cobra Kai hitting someone that he cares about.
Yeah.
And it's the first time the mirror's ever been put in front of him. The first time he's ever been able to like see the world from the other side, perceive of how this is taken by everyone else. And it sets him on his own path of unwinding and deconstructing everything that he's thought up to this point in time. Then he has these conversations with Johnny where he's able to finally reinterpret like, wait a minute. Oh, Johnny does believe in so much of what I said, but he thinks I'm a monster. Wait, what if like, and he can see it just a little bit differently. Whereas Silver had the reverse snap of like, he's just fully embraced being a sociopath and this pursuit of more power at that point in time. So I thought it played better when I could see it a second time and understand their arcs a little bit better and where all of it's headed, where their journey's going. But, and I hope their play will play that a little bit out some of this, having Kreese have more nuance to him.
Yeah.
And helping us understand, like, there are some of these kids he really actually does care about.
Yeah. I would say he cares about Tori.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And then he has this moment where he realizes, like, he's starting to, like, have this awareness of, like, wait, what I told Johnny 35 years ago is what pushed him away. And then he's in this moment, and the same thing he was saying to Tori, and he's like, wait, that's not the right answer. That was the wrong answer to tell Johnny. And they just had that conversation about it. And like you have that amount of awareness that like when you watch it a second time, it plays a little bit better when you can piece it all together. At least that was my experience with it. So I had a few issues with that first watch through of like, what's going on with these two guys and they're changing sides on everything. That rewatching it came together better.
Gotcha. Okay. Crazy Cat Lady says, I am happy that Kreese is finally punished for almost killing Johnny in the first movie second movie. And now Daniel is Wow. And now Daniel and Chosen are working together. Yes, I like the direction they're taking Kreese for sure. I think there's a lot of potential in that. And by the end of the stream, we will definitely be discussing Chosen and Daniel and the implications of that as well. Let me see. I think we're caught up on super chats. All right. Moving on to Miguel. So Miguel, he's been a fairly consistent character as far as one of my favorites, if not my favorite, as far as the kids go. And this season kind of continues on with that. And you get a lot more of a focus on his father-son relationship with Johnny this season.
Yeah.
Like it's always kind of felt that way, but it was never really addressed. You know,
Yeah.
at best, he was just trying to kind of hook up with his mom because they're right there and they kind of bond over his son or her son. But I like the focus this season where you got one of the big things that was kind of driving a wedge between Johnny and Daniel, aside from Cobra Kai's intervention, was seeing Miguel embrace Miyagi-Do and feeling like his son's getting pulled away from him yet again by Daniel.
And Daniel, who has everything, Daniel, who has a relationship with his own daughter, and he's taking the one thing that Johnny has. Johnny's gained something, and Daniel's taking it away.
Yeah, exactly. So I liked that as far as a little bit of a struggle. That was another way to where I thought it was a very narratively sensical way to drive a wedge between them that made sense. It didn't just feel like we got to figure out a way for them to fight again. So that was cool. I liked how they developed his relationship with all of the characters even more, even though he was kind of on his own journey this season. And I'm very intrigued with where they left him. I'll be honest with you. The other element of the show that I thought was really ridiculous was his little back snap thing. I thought that was really overdone. But again, that's just part of the show. Like when it happened, and then in the next episode, it's resolved in 5 minutes. You think he's paralyzed again.
And they start the next episode in the hospital. Yeah. And they showing you x-rays, and you're like, oh, crap, what happened to Miguel? Oh, that's Stingray.
Yeah.
They play it out to make you go, and they show you the flashbacks of him with a broken back to make you think something much worse. And the sound they make is not like a back spasm sound. Like, when your back spasms, it does not make a sound.
Yeah.
When your bones snap and you had surgery because from a broken back, that makes a loud noise. But so they overcooked it and tricked me into thinking the season was over. But fair enough. But
yeah. So that was the only element that I was like, too much, guys. But I do like the direction that one of the most sad moments in the season is where you finally get, and it was, again, I talked about Breaking Bad earlier, and this parallel Breaking Bad for me, to where you have drunken Johnny and Miguel after this terrible prom night, kind of bonding once again, and he's tucking him away in bed, and he's like, stop. You know, I just want to be a father to you. I just want to do right by you. And Miguel sits and like, you could tell he's almost choking up and bringing tears to his eyes. And he's like, you're doing fine. Like, I love you. And he goes, I love you too, Robbie. And you're like, no.
Oh. I would say that's the most gut wrenching moment of the show.
Yes.
And it's not even close. Like, cause you're watching it and it's working, playing it straight. Of like, it is really like Johnny is losing it, and and on the one hand, we also know he really does believe that all of that about Miguel too. And then drunken Johnny says the wrong name, which is with the information we also have about what's going on with Miguel, his struggles, what Robbie just said to him. It was the absolute wrong moment for that particular statement, and so you set the like. As we're watching, when I'm watching it the second time, my wife had fallen asleep because I binged it at 3 a.m. the first time I was finishing it up. And so she fell asleep with like 4 episodes left. So when she watched it, it was my second time watching through. So I'm watching her and I know what she was like. Grown men crying. That is her ultimate, like, oh no. Yeah. And it's such a sincere moment for both of them of just really being vulnerable, defining how they feel about each other. And she's like, oh no, oh man, that's so sweet. And then he goes, I love you too, Robbie. And she's like, ah! It just loses it in that moment because it's so gut wrenching of just the misunderstanding of the moment where like he does believe all that about Miguel. We know that, but, and we also know drunk people say dumb stuff all the time. That's the definition of a drunk person. But it's that perfect, and that's what the show does so well, of finding the perfect set of misunderstandings, bad timing, wrong way to communicate information. And he's so vulnerable. Johnny says the one thing that touches on his most insecure feeling towards Johnny, which is, am I just your replacement for your son you can't connect with?
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny confirmed that, though it's not really true.
Yeah.
In the fullest of senses.
Absolutely. And it paralleled Breaking Bad a lot for me, because there's an episode in season 4 to where him and Jesse get into a fist fight. And Jesse, very much for Walt, is kind of, in a different sense, the same relationship as Johnny and Miguel. It's like his other son that he doesn't really know how to tell him. That's how he feels. And so after they have this fist fight, Walt's drunk and his actual son is there nursing him and, helping him out and getting him back into bed. And it's the first moment that he's had to connect with his father in 4 seasons, and even tells him that, like, you haven't been human since a year ago when you got this diagnosis. And he's like, all right, I love you. All right, see you later, Jesse. And you're like, oh, and it was the same exact thing to me, to where I saw that, and immediately after I took my heart off the ground and put it back in my chest, I was like, oh, that's like Breaking Bad. But I liked that as a nice setup to get Miguel on the journey that he's going to go to. Now, we talked about this, and maybe it was yesterday. Somebody had suggested to me in the comment section, and I read it and I went, oh no. And somebody said it even in the live chat over here, that Mike Barnes is probably Miguel's father, and that's how he's going to be brought in. And I immediately went, that makes so much sense that that's exactly what they would do. But God, I hope not, because that is so contrived if it is.
Well, and that's there've been murmurs of that since the very beginning of, like, Miguel doesn't have a dad. How many other characters are out there that could be the dad? And then so Mike Barnes is the obvious person to bring in, but it's small universe syndrome where everyone is connected, and 30 years later Johnny finds a new son that he's going to train, and it turns out to be the son of Daniel's other rival. Like, it's just that small universe syndrome that doesn't because it's a mystery, because there's intrigue of who is the dad, what's going to happen here. There's only so many other male characters in this universe that could be the right age, that could be like, the character is someone we already know, and so it pays off in that way. And it's Mike Barnes is the only real one that's left. Like, there are the characters in the next Karate Kid, but none of them have any ties to Daniel. So it's like, it's Walton Goggins. It's Walton Goggins. Remember, he was a side character in the next Karate Kid. Of course, no one cares. So Mike Barnes is the only person they could be like, open the door. And there he is. What is Sean Carnes? What is his name? Is something like that?
I think so.
Something like that. He's right there, and it's Mike Barnes, and it's the only one that could have that weight to it of the surprise revealed. And so then, do you think that's who it would have to be in that sense? But I just don't think it's not the right play. It's, if you want that, if all you care about is that moment of like, sure, or Miguel goes to Mexico City, but his dad's not there because he's already come back to start his Cobra Kai dojo in LA for Terry Silver fund. Like, you can see how this could play out, and it fits into the way they write the show.
Exactly.
I just don't think that's the satisfying way to do it. Like, have him go there, and it's a nobody. It's something. It's a well, here to tie back to a movie that everybody loved. It's Rambo: The Last Blood syndrome of the person finds their lost father in Mexico, and they really are a deadbeat. Like, there's a reason that they're a deadbeat. And you bring Mike Barnes in as just the fulfillment of his Terry Silver commitment. But I also, even on not to go too rabbit traily on this, but like, even in the Mike Barnes how you bring him in, like, you have to, like, some of the characters have to grow up a little bit. Like, he was a kid when he was a bully, so he's not gonna. If you play him as everyone's still the same, I don't. I
think Silver proved that they could be more creative than that. Hopefully,
right? Exactly. So how do you bring him in a way that he does get one of his dojos or whatever, but he's not just an 18-year-old bully still, or whatever, like whatever that would be. Anyway, but I just hope Mike Barnes isn't Miguel's dad. Well, I don't want that.
Bernie here just broke the internet. He said that I heard Mike Barnes could be Tori's father. So there you go. He's Miguel's father and he's Tori's father, and they were brother and sister the whole time. There's your season 6 reveal. Right before we close season 5, they're gonna be like brother, sister, and then boom, the Luke and Leia thing. We're back to Star Wars. So there's way. I mean, obviously their goal by the end of this is going to get Mike Barnes in here, to potentially even get Hilary Swank in here. I think the only original Cobra Kai guy we haven't seen was Steve McQueen's son, Dutch or whatever. I mean, Dutch could be his his father for all we know. So they're going to find ways to bring
Chad
them all
McQueen.
in. Yes,
Chad
exactly.
McQueen.
So Terry Silver even had a line about like, I'll get some of my people to help me keep Cobra Kai going right at the end of the season. And so that right there opens up.
Right there. Like it makes sense to bring all those guys back. And but try to think who is left to be brought back. You got Blake Lively's sister, Robin Lively, that you could bring her back, but that was nothing to do with that plot line that would be interesting. There's nowhere for that to go.
No.
And then of course Hilary Swank. Or people like, how would she even know Daniel? Like, well, Mr. Miyagi had like 2 of these surrogate kids, so the idea that he wouldn't know her, that they wouldn't have met at the funeral or something, seems like, of course they would have met. They're probably not close, but they would have met.
Yeah, we'll see. She's definitely the biggest actor as far as name that they could bring in, so I wouldn't be surprised at some point.
Yeah, and that's, I guess it's a tricky one of like, this is the embarrassment for her career of like right before she became Oscar winner Hilary Swank, she was in the much hated, it was literally like 1 year, right? They're like, it was like right after she did the next Karate Kid, which probably seemed like a great career move, and then that movie has been the butt end of jokes for 30 years, and then she becomes. Yeah, she wins Oscars immediately afterwards, and so for her, she probably has a very different relationship to it than even Allie, who also has gone on to have a big gigantic career, but then for her that was a launching pad for a big career as opposed to Hilary Swank, which was so. I wonder if that what that. I'm fascinated with if they would be able to get her to come back, and that'd be interesting. The 2 surrogate kids finally having a conversation together.
That she's the last person to come in to team up against Cobra Kai. So if they haven't already made that phone call, they better start figuring out what her number is. Renegade Hero, didn't Duchess actor die? I don't know. As far as I know, the only one that's died is the one that was actually a narrative in season 2. The get him a body bag guy. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But he could be. But that would take him out of the equation, obviously. So moving on from Miguel, we have Samantha. Now Samantha's a character I've always liked, but I actually loved what they did with her in this season, probably more than any other season, because she's always kind of felt like a bit of a side character to not really the focus. Like it's always Miguel, Robbie, and she's always just kind of been that source of melodrama between them, the love triangle thing. And so this season, I love
Chad McQueen is not dead. He just hasn't done any acting in 20 years.
There you go. So Samantha, like we already talked about, was very much the catalyst of the theme of the series, or the theme of the season. And that she, from the get-go, is like, I want to learn Eagle Fang. I want to learn everything. I want to have all the ammo that I possibly can so that whenever I get to this tournament, I know what guns to use. And so I really liked throughout the season where she kind of has that pull to where she is very much loyal to her father and loyal to the teachings of Miyagi, but all at the same time, she wants to learn all this new stuff with Eagle Fang, and even the attitude side of her where she confronts Tori first day of school right at the front door and tells her how it's going to go. Even to the point where in the actual tournament where she's actually utilizing both, she beats one person using Eagle Fang, she's fighting Tori and switching between them, and she's the catalyst that actually finally brings the 2 senseis together as they're, coaching her from the same side of the mat. I really liked what they did with her this season, and it felt like the melodrama between her and Miguel and her and Robbie was toned down quite a bit to where it still made narrative sense that they would fight at the prom, and they would probably have a little bit of a tiff about why are you even talking to Robbie when we're here together, and trying to go and talk to Robbie at his little skate park and stuff like that. But it didn't feel like that ultra CW, we got to be melodramatic thing that they've been doing for a while.
Well, it was part of each of their character arcs that are even paid off in the finale of Samantha's on this journey of being more aggressive and learning to assert herself, whereas she was too passive in the previous 2 seasons and let Tori walk all over. So she is like wanting to be more of who Miguel was in the previous 2 seasons. Miguel's on the opposite journey, and Miguel is also on a journey of like, why am I doing this? What is this all for? In which case, when they have those moments of conflict, in a certain sense, they're in agreement about what they should be doing, but their reasons for it are so different that it felt earned. Even when they do overreact, it makes sense that they're overreacting, as opposed to a lot of the other seasons where it was like, you're just overcooking it because you need that for the show. But yeah, I totally agree with you about Samantha's been one of these characters that was you're kind of like the vanilla of the show, of like, she's not the person that has a big gigantic character arc. She's not someone that's distinctly a villain. She makes some bad choices, but she's not, off the rails frustrating. She's kind of pretty vanilla, and then this season she kind of becomes her own person. And even when she does stuff that kind of like, I didn't enjoy her being at Tori's work and harassing her. Yeah. But it was like the right thing to do. I didn't think it was bad writing. It was good writing that made me feel like you want Sam to put Tori in her place. What you don't want is rich girl harassing poor girl at work while poor girl's trying to make a living to support her mom. And so when you create those dynamics that are interesting of like, you want Sam to do like get back at her, but not like this. That's writing that has layers to it.
Yeah, and in a way, which we'll get into here in a little bit, that also is one of the strengths of this season, is they do these things that aren't even necessarily Tori focused, but they do things that actually make her feel like more of a sympathetic character. Where they
a lot
fell
more
on their face with that in season 3. So, yeah, I totally agree.
I would call Tori, and we'll get to her later, but she was by far the most improved character this season.
Yes, yeah.
Like when I'm doing my character rankings in a couple days, I don't have any clue what's going to be. Tori was easily like next to last season, and I don't know because they fixed her. They fixed the character while not doing something different with her. They just fixed the character. But yeah, Sam, I really dug this kind of journey of her discovering that what she needed was a little bit more Johnny, a little bit more eagle fake, more aggression, and that was like one of those character dynamics I wouldn't have thought would be interesting. Of like, watching her, even in the stupid stuff of jumping between buildings and being like, yeah, I'm not going to do everything my parents want forever. Johnny's right. I'm going to jump across this building. And Johnny's like excited for her. And she like has this moment where she appreciates that. And then when the two of them, are Daniel and Johnny are breaking up and do break up, where she's like telling her dad, I want to learn from him. Like, I want to do that. We will be better. We will be stronger if I do that. And then you get to the final tournament and she wins by using that stuff. Like, that's her big advantage, is that she knows more than just Miyagi-Do. And that's like, she was right and Daniel was wrong. And as much as there's moments where it's like, her confronting Tori at school, where we know Tori's doing the right thing. Like Tori is like trying to grow, learn. She's going back to high school because she wants to be able to take care of her family. And so Sam confronting her is good for Sam learning to assert herself, but the execution of what she's doing, her application of that good thing, her application of what Aisha said to her was something where you go, oh, this is actually not the right, like, it's like this mixed bag of like, on every level you're conflicted, and that's what I thought this season did really well. So I really dug what they did with Samantha. Once again, when I do my character ranking in a couple days, I don't know how it's going to go, because I just thought so many of the characters were improved and given more nuance and layers. Maybe I need to take back what I said. Maybe it is better than season 1. I don't know.
It's close. And yeah, and to the point where I was planning on doing a character ranking as well. And after this season, I kind of regretted not doing one last year, because the same thing, like, so many things would have changed. Some of the characters after season 3, I'm like, oh, I don't know. And then season 4, now they would be swapping places with somebody else. Perfect example of that is Hawk, who we'll talk about now, to where Hawk has been a character that I have liked, and he's certainly been the biggest character arc as far as going from absolute victim to potentially the biggest bully at Cobra Kai, and then going all the way back down to where he was to a certain degree, but stronger. And so last season, I didn't really buy his character arc. It felt like that writing issue that we were talking about, where they need somebody to do something in the moment, so they just make it happen without making it feel like it was built up or natural. That was kind of my issue with season 3 with Hawk, to where he goes to this big final battle at the LaRusso house. He leads them all there, breaks into the house, is beating the hell out of all of these Miyagi-Do kids, and then just in a moment decides, nah, I'm going to switch sides. And so, though I like the implications of him going to the good side, that was one of my issues with season 3, where I'm like, ugh, they got to develop this more. I'm not really going to buy it. And I thought they did a good job this season. I was a little worried the first couple episodes, to where he's supposed to be
still
a good guy
butthead,
now. Yeah, but he still immediately goes to Kenny, throws his stuff down. He's like, you better get out of Cobra Kai, or something bad's going to happen to you. And it's like, that doesn't sound like what that character would say. But okay. And then the rest of the season, though, especially after he gets his mohawk cut off, I really liked what he did, to where he doesn't really want to stay with Johnny. He wants to learn from Daniel to where he kind of needs that good pull, and he wants to learn that side of things to the point where he brings in a sledgehammer and you think he's about to do something bad, and he's actually helping them build a little fighting platform. And him kind of feeling like the Mohawk took away his strength, and him finding that again by the end of the tournament, to where that great line to where he goes and he's about ready to face, or he faced Miguel. Miguel's doing his thing, and now it's going to be him against Robbie. And the girl that he's been swooning after for 3 seasons that he's been on the rocks with comes over and reassures all of his confidence and tells him exactly what he needs to hear. And he just turns to him like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm the guy who's going to win this whole fucking thing." And then, oh, you hear that music and the little hawk sound. And so I liked a lot what they did with his character, to the point where him winning the All Valley, I thought was a great moment for him.
Well, and you think a season ago, Hawk winning All Valley, you'd be like, "Oh dear, like no, don't."
The guy that cheated in the first season, no,
yeah, right, cheated. The guy who was such a jerk, and like the example of so much of what was bad about this aggressive version of karate. And they take him on this journey of humility to where suddenly that happens, and the reasons that it happens, the way that it plays out, it was like the ending that you didn't know you wanted, which is what good writing is.
Yeah, and him being able to take out Kyler finally was awesome. Him having the fight with Robbie, who at that point seemed unstoppable, and actually being able to use both, just like with Samantha, being able to use both of his versions of teaching to eventually win out over Robbie at his. I loved what they did. I love what they did with his character a lot. And his relationship with Demetri. We can talk about Demetri now too. Like him, they were been on the rocks. Obviously, they had that little moment at the end of season 3 with their friends now. But the way that they developed their kind of rekindling of their friendship throughout this season, I enjoyed. Where he gets the little nerd videos where they were doing all the weird music video stuff, or even at the prom where they're sitting there and they're talking about how miserable they are, and then Demetri's girl shows up and he's like, I gotta go, and then Hawk's just kind of laughing like, go ahead, have fun.
Yeah, so Demetri, I would say, is the most improved character of season 3. Because he was insufferable in season 2. And he was a pretty minor, not as big of a part in season 1, but then when they just took him so far down a really annoying path in season 2 of like everything, he's whining and complaining. So they improved him in season 3, and then he's just fully out of how annoying he was before, of like the kid that didn't realize that he could actually be good at this stuff discovers it, and then he's just his giddiness of like, I actually won. Like, what? How did that just happen? And and when he loses, he's like, "Man, that guy was really good." It's like, right, he's really good. You don't have to beat yourself up about losing to someone that's great. Like, you did great, and you care. Like, you feel all the victories that he has as he's grown as a character and past all the things that made him so annoying before. He stopped being those things.
Yeah.
Real character arcs of like, and it felt earned and right and still consistent with who he is. It's not, some of these characters we talk about, like Hawk has done a little bit of this stuff where he changes and then he's a jerk again, then he changes. And Robbie's done a bit of that too. But Demetri feels like he's an actual journey. It's one step at a time that's gotten to a point where you're actually like, that guy actually won. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Sweet.
Even to the point where he's dating what was the hottest chick at school, which like is total movie stuff. Like in reality, that probably would never happen, but you don't even care. You don't even care. Like she swoons over him like he's Brad Pitt, and you won it. You're like, yes, you're damn right. You came back just to go to prom with this guy because he's so awesome. And it's
and that's the thing. I this is really important rabbit trail we'll go down. I was just really frustrated at all the scenes in this show where Johnny goes out and tries to tell all these dudes, if you want to get babes, you have to learn karate. And then repeatedly that's played at the butt end of jokes, but Johnny is right every time he says that. Hawk, Demetri, these total nerds,
Miguel
getting all the babes. Miguel, they're getting all the babes. And so from the opening car, all of them have ended up dating one of these guys because of karate. So Johnny was right.
Yeah,
and
by the end of season 6,
he's
that's
so
be the
wise.
At the end.
Johnny was right. Karate gets the babes. Kicks get the chicks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, man. Now moving on to what we've pretty much agreed on is the 2 most improved characters overall, which is Robbie and Tori. And there's enough where we could talk about both of them individually. So I think you and I were pretty close in agreement that Robbie was kind of on the low end, certainly, of our characters. If we were to do a ranking,
I think they were my bottom two after last season.
Some of it, honestly, was the actor. Not that he's terrible, but there's certain emotional moments that I don't really feel like the actor that plays Robbie really nails. But what I was not expecting to like this guy at all, because with the journey that he goes on with season 3, by the end of the season, where he's literally fighting his dad for the honor of John Kreese out of nowhere, I was like, to hell with this guy. There's no coming back. There's no redeeming him. I'm going to hate him forever. And shame on me, because season 4 made me love the character more than I ever have. And I think part of it is that I think he functions much better as a villain that has pulls to the light, more than he functions as a good guy that has pulls to the darkness. I feel like whenever he's really going hardcore with the Miyagi-Do and the breathing and the centering, it just doesn't quite work. But when he's being kind of a dick and he's confident and he's teaching everybody all these things, and like even when he walks in and he's like, I'm leading the class today, if you don't like it, try and hit me, and he takes all of them out, like moments like that, he just works for me. But you get these moments of where he pulls back to the light, where he's trying to mentor Kenny, or even where they end the season, which was a great moment with him and Johnny finally getting that moment of reconciliation to a degree, where he tells his dad, like, I feel like I've destroyed this kid. Like I'm looking in a mirror. I don't know what I've done. And his dad, Johnny, tells him, like, look, you had a good thing going. Like, blame me. That's my fault. And he says, I'm tired of blaming you. And then they embrace. Like, that's just such a great moment to build off of. But everything they did with him, utilizing Cobra Kai, utilizing John Kreese and Terry Silver and all of the people in Cobra Kai to kind of try to get back at his anger at Johnny and Daniel, just by the end of the season, to realize that it did nothing but make things worse, and come to that conclusion himself, made him completely redeemed for me, to where I'm actually on board for his character arc now.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it is also, you can only do this thing where Robbie's mad at the world for so long. And, you know, since episode 1, they've been making it clear these two guys have issues, and Robbie doesn't trust him and is angry at him for abandoning him. And you can only hit that note so many times before it's like, all right, come on. Your dad's the one that keeps reaching out to you. He keeps trying to do something, and you can look at him and see he's making different choices, and you just keep being a jerk. You keep making bad choices. You can't blame him. And that's what season 3 did, was, okay, your dad's reaching out to you. Your dad's enemy that you lied to and manipulated your way into his house to get back at your dad, that guy still accepted you all throughout season 2, really poured into you, and you're mad at him too because you lost your cool and kicked, like you just have to take some responsibility. And that's in season 3. He didn't, but he's like, oh, but I'm going to team up with John Kreese. I'm going to find a third father figure. And this is the one. And that's where, like, it just rang empty. And it felt like we're just hitting these same notes again. And then what they actually did with him during the season wasn't really that. It wasn't him like, Mr. Kreese, yeah, you're the best now. It didn't do that. And instead played kind of this clear point that he doesn't go along with anything, but he's trying to be a mentor. And so when you get to the end of the season and that goes horribly, he starts to realize, like, wait, what have I done here? Wait, what did I sacrifice everything for what? And then Kenny, oh no, like, this kid's a monster now. I saw a kid being bullied and I turned him into, like, the worst bully of them all. Oh no. And so having it come to some sort of resolution with Johnny at the end of all of that, it gives him an actual arc. Whereas it just felt like these 1 step forward, 2 steps back for 3 seasons. And then this was finally taking him somewhere that felt like actual growth and development. And so that was what we're talking about, most improved characters, that they actually had him grow and change, have those moments where he went, this was me. I did this. I can't just keep blaming everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, especially, I don't know if you were as down on him by the end of season 3 as I was, but I was full on. I think I even said it in my review, like, I hate this character now. I don't care. Like, whatever. He can get hit by a car at the beginning of season 4. I'm not going to shed a tear. Yeah. And by the end of season 4, I'm like, man, I really want to see what happens with him and Johnny now. Is he going to be Eagle Fang? or is he still going to be Cobra Kai but just respect his father? Like, what's going on? And so I'm really invested. Another character I'm really invested in, which I wasn't as down on this one because this character was kind of one note evil from the beginning,
Right.
but just kind of disappointed they didn't do anything different with her, was Tori.
Right.
So Tori, from the moment that she's been introduced, has been a psychopath. She's, you know, immediately in Cobra Kai as the badass girl to be the yin and yang to Miguel and then to Robbie, and the main aggressor towards Samantha. And they spent 2 whole seasons on the rivalry between her and Samantha. And to a certain degree, they spend another season on that here. But where season 3 tried to humanize her by saying that her mean landlord wants to screw her.
Right.
Oh my God. Season 4 is like, oh no. Like they introduced the whole thing with her mom in season 3, but they don't really make that the focal point. They make the creepy mechanic guy the focal point, to where Kreese has to come in and break his thumb. And so they choose this season to make it to where they surprisingly used Daniel's wife, who's always been a good character, but always a background character. Mm-hmm. But they used her to really humanize Tori in some surprising ways this season, to where she starts off the season just wanting to threaten Tori, like, stay away from my house, stay away from my daughter, I will throw you in jail. Like, I'm the one that wants to throw you in jail, but I'm going along with this stupid tournament thing for that respect of my husband. And gets her fired inadvertently from her job. And she starts to realize all these little implications of high school drama bullcrap, to where I'm going to go confront this teenager. And then now she can't take care of her brother and sister because the mother is, and she tries to deliver food, and all this little development that they get through the relationship with Tori and Mrs. LaRusso, to the point where she's the one that gets her back into school, and even causes some tension between her and Samantha, because she's like, why are you helping this psychotic person? And it just did a much better job at giving you some context to why Tori is the way that she is. And even to the point where Tori starts to grow a little bit, to where she doesn't necessarily want to continue this stuff. And in a way, every single confrontation she has with Samantha's the one that kind of strikes first. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even to where you have the tournament itself, and she accidentally elbows her, and she's trying to tell her, like, it was an accident, I swear I didn't do it, I'm not cheating. And nobody believes it, obviously, because she's Cobra Kai. And even to the point where she wins and she finds out that Terry Silver paid off the guy, and that's probably the only reason that she won, or that,
well, if you count the
out
points,
of bounds kick. Yeah.
If you watch the season a second time, when you watch it a second time, like you know the end of it, you realize, like, Sam wins 2 points in a row if the out of the bounds kick doesn't count, in which case she just clearly just won. Yeah. And so you watch it realizing, like, all the last 3 minutes of the fight was never supposed to happen. Yeah. It's all like the elbow to the eye, the final kick, the win. None of that was supposed to happen. Because Samantha would have just won. Yeah. And that's like, you have those scenes at the end where Tori realizes, like, wait, and you play it out through what this win meant for her of, I don't win at anything in life, and I finally won this. And it means nothing because she actually won. Yeah. I only won because that guy paid off the judge. I thought I won because I was better than her, and I wasn't. And also, I elbowed her in the eye, and so she couldn't see very well when I did get the final win. I really didn't win this fight. And they brought her on enough of a journey where they played each of the scenes. To, as you said, Samantha's the aggressor. And they keep playing scenes to where Amanda does something that has at first a bunch of it is the negative to her. And so they just play the scenes to where you're understanding why she's doing what she's doing. And she's like, her flipping out at her job and getting fired. Well, that's on her. And she apparently had done other things, but, like, the reason that why an immature high schooler with emotional trouble would behave in that manner makes sense. And it just felt like a much more believable, well-rounded person. And I've had some conversations with some people, like, the idea that Amanda would be the one helping her, that doesn't feel believable, and all this stuff. And
they explain that away when she says that she was a troubled youth.
And I think also if you met enough, if you're moms, if you, like, I've worked with teenagers since I stopped being a teenager. The number of 30, 35, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds that want to help any teenager they can to avoid making the mistakes that they made. The number of adults that really care, it's so many. So many people that just have so much ache and pain in their heart for what they did, everything that happened to them, what went, the choices they made, the things they were controlled, the things they weren't going to, that they want to help people. That is a lot of people out there. As much as like I know that it can feel like we're all alone, there's so many people that really do care and want to help others. And so like that stuff to me feels like that all that stuff made total sense to me. But I also can see why like if you're just watching the show and you're like a teenager, you're like, what? They broken her. Why would she do that? Like, because she can see why she's doing it. She understands the big picture that this is an angry person that doesn't know where to channel their anger, and it's picked the wrong target.
Yeah. And when you're an adult, you see through kids. You see the reasons and why and the catalyst for everything. I mean, totally unrelated, but before we went live, like I was talking about my kids and how they both respond to chores and everything. And as a parent, every single time I get mad at my kids for something, I always know where it comes from. I always know the mindset. I remember exactly thinking that way. And so it's a much more extreme example after they've committed felonies, but you still can look at it and be like, okay, I used to be that person. I was the one doing things like this. I see why she's heading this path. She has nobody that's going to guide her because everybody in her life is telling her to go the other direction and be worse.
Right.
And so it made sense for me.
And even the reason Sam doesn't understand, it's the same reason that some people in the comment section are like, wait, what's going on here? And that's, like as we talked about earlier, the weird broad appeal of this show of so many different generations enjoying it for such different reasons and connecting with such different characters in such different ways. Even your interpretation of these interactions can be wildly different from someone else.
Yeah. And
I thought all that stuff was great.
No,
like
I did
when they
too.
first introduced it of like, she's at the job and you're kind of like, yeah, or right. Putting her in her plate. Yeah. And she loses her job and you go, oh, is this where this is going? This is not a plot line I ever would have thought like, yeah, like what if Amanda was mentoring Tori? I wouldn't have thought that, but then it plays out really nicely. And then as once again, going back to watching it a second time with my wife who hadn't seen it before, you get to the final episode and right before the fight, Amanda walks up to her and goes, is everything going well? Like, I got to get ready for my fight. Like, right. I'm just really proud of what you've done, but now you got to pay it back. And yet, like I heard my wife go, no, she's not going to do it. She's like, I don't want you to throw the fight. You can win. I don't care if you win. Just don't hurt my daughter.
Yeah.
And that's the only request. Just don't, that's all Amanda's really said this whole season to her is the request. Stop hurting my daughter.
Yeah.
Fight all you
says, want. I'm going to root for my daughter, but all I'm really rooting for is that this fight ends everything. And I'm very curious and invested on where that triangle of relationships is going to go in season 5, especially being that she elbowed her and accidentally, but from Amanda's perspective, did exactly what she told her not to do or hoped that she wouldn't do. So I'm curious if there's going to be tension there. And they set up things really nicely to where I could believe a journey to them reconciling, to where if you had asked me that in season 3, I'm like, there's no way in hell Samantha's ever going to be cool with Tori, ever.
Yeah, and so I just thought all that was just handled really nicely. And once again, bringing it to a conclusion and having moments, like even the way that plays out, of like you have that pause and that little beat in there where you're like, is Amanda asking her to do, like she can't pause, but that's not where it goes. And there's so many of those moments that they set up really nicely where you could see them doing the twist and then they don't. They play it out right. They played out. And that's just what the season is handled really nicely.
Absolutely. Now, a big surprise this season for me, which seems to be a divisive element, honestly, from judging from the comment section here, but also the comment section of my video, is the focus that we got on Anthony LaRusso with the new character of Kenny. And that was one of the biggest surprises to me because up to this point, I've hated this character because it's like the worst example of a kid that you could possibly have, to where he's just so rich, spoiled, entitled, to where like even just the singular scene, I think it's in season 1, where he takes his PS Vita away from him and he literally goes like, hey Siri, order a new PS Vita. And he's like, wait, no, stop, override. And so, whoops, my computer's doing it. I didn't say the other one, the Amazon one, not wanting her to turn on, and I accidentally turned on Siri. So even moments like that, that's all we've gotten from this character. And then this season, they do this reverse of the original Karate Kid movie, to where you get this new kid in town, a little bit quirky, a little bit different, and a LaRusso is the bully, and the eventual Cobra Kai is the victim. And I thought it was a really cool, creative way of kind of flipping that dynamic, while all the way through the season showing that Anthony doesn't necessarily want to be that way, but kind of does. It's kind of peer pressure, but it's also kind of him just being a dick. And all the way to the point where by the end of the season, when Daniel has just had enough, he smashes his iPad over his knee and it tells him like it's done. You're not being this person anymore. I liked that journey that they went on as father and son, to where I'm curious if that's going to be developed to where he's eventually going to be a student. And that's another thing. There are like a couple seasons ago, I would have been like, I don't care if he ever joins Cobra Kai. You could pretty much write him off the show if you want to. And then now I'm like, I want to see what's going on with him. And Kenny was another interesting one, to where this really sweet, kind of nerdy kid, very innocent, just kind of wants to just be himself, and gets terrorized for it all year long, and then just becomes full on evil by the end of it, to where even Anthony comes up and tries to apologize, tries to congratulate him on his win. And, hey, it's okay. Like Robbie's just a badass. Like, don't think anything about it. And he just beats the living hell out of him and gets in his face. Like, wait till next year, bitch. It was great. It was a great way to end it off, to where Robbie looks at it and he's like, what have I done?
And you're the whole time you're watching these actions with Kenny, the whole second half of the season, you don't really know where it's going.
Yeah.
And so then you have these moments. You have this the episode 7 where he gets his revenge and he sets the trap where they chase him into the library and he starts taking him out stealth style. And then the teacher comes in and you're going, okay, at this moment, he's the one that just beat people up. Like, are we going further down the path of what's going to happen here? And then the big reveal is that, like, no, Anthony, you're suspended. And then Kenny turns to him and is like, gotcha. And you start to, and like, on the one hand, you're like, yes, I'm very happy that happened. On the flip side, you're like, that's a little bit unnerving. The way that, like, this is probably going to go, this could be bad. And then you get to the last couple episodes with the tournament, and you have Robbie being super fun and mentoring with Kenny. And then in the fight, Kreese pushes Robbie to snap and beats the crap out of Kenny in this fight in a way that you're like, oh dear, Robbie, like, you just did that to a middle schooler. What are you doing? And you're thinking, like, which way was this going to go? Like, did this just soften Kenny to, like, be like, this aggressiveness is bad? And so then the start of the scene with Anthony is him nursing a bloody nose from a Cobra Kai. And is this going to be the moment where Kenny's like, these guys are jerks, I don't want to be a part of these guys? Or is it the moment where, like, he just fully embraced it? Like, well, I mean, of course this high schooler just beat the crap out of me. Strike first. No mercy, of course. And that's the direction he goes. And so then you're watching this sweet little kid that got tricked into showing up in his cosplay to the park where he's humiliated, beating the crap out of Anthony. On the one hand, you're like, I don't feel bad for Anthony in this moment, really, because Anthony really did some awful, awful things. And at the same time, you're like, oh no, what have you done to sweet little Kenny? This is not what I wanted Kenny to turn into. And back to what I've mentioned many times, the way that these scenes have the different layers to them. Of you have the payoff you want of Sam putting Tori in her place, the payoff of Kenny taking out Anthony. At the same time, you're like, this isn't what I wanted it to be, though. This isn't the way I wanted this to go.
Careful what you wish for. Yeah, that was a big surprise for me. And it seems like some people didn't like the focus that it got because they're brand new characters.
Right,
especially in Anthony's case, he's always been, to a painful point, like a background character where his presence is just annoying when he pops up. But I thought it was a good direction, and it was a good little surprise side story. And it also shined a light on a big strength this season where they did a really good job at balancing everything. With the amount of characters that we have in the show at this point, it didn't really feel like anybody got shortchanged. To the point where some characters that were completely left out of season 3 are brought back in this season, in Aisha and Stingray. More significantly so Stingray, but you have a really good scene with Aisha, which I still don't know. I don't know if she was written off the show or if she had to leave the show, but she was just kind of thrown away in a line in season 3, which seemed odd because she was one of the bigger characters the first 2 seasons. And then this season, she has this really good scene with Samantha, which you talked about. Kind of, she gets the wrong message out of what she said about, assert yourself and put the first foot forward and go and confront people. But she's saying it like in a good way. Like, I had to get ahead of the bullying. And Sam takes it and is like, I'm coming for you, bitch. Like day one. So I liked her cameo. I thought it was nice. I'd like to see her back in the show at some point, but if they don't have anything for her, I guess it makes sense not to have her there. I don't know if that was the motivation. If you have any info that I don't have on why she's
I
not
don't know.
there.
I've seen a number of videos and articles pop up, the real reason Aisha didn't come back. And anytime I see a title like that, I'm like, well, okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's not going to contain the
tabloids.
real reason, so I'm not going to click on that. So I don't know the backstory, but yeah, I think like you said, of like with the and as I've kind of touched on it with several points in here, they do a good job of setting the expectation of where you want something to go. So you have an episode where you spend the first 25 minutes showing us the good reasons that Tori is going back to school. And you have Samantha on the journey of processing that happening. Her friend tells her something that any reasonable person that's not emotionally compromised takes that in one direction, and then you get to the final scene and Sam takes it in the opposite direction. And so it's like it makes total sense that that's what she would do in light of that information and the way she would interpret Tori's actions, because she does not have the information we have, and she is emotionally compromised for good, fair reasons.
Yeah.
But that's like the show doing a really good job of misdirecting where we're expecting things to go and delivering something different, that at the same time you go, yeah, that does make sense. And that is the journey that is her character arc for the season. And so even for what the payoff is for her in the finale, it makes sense that this is one of the stops along the way. That she was a little bit more aggressive, and she's no longer afraid of Tori, and she's going to walk right up to her. But that's a very, like, it's just not what you expected in light of the episode, but it makes sense of the whole show in general.
Absolutely. And then we also have the return of Stingray in the last number of episodes, who's a character who's admittedly one of the more over-the-top elements, especially for season 2, which in and of itself is probably the most over-the-top season of the show thus far, to where you get this middle-aged guy.
What do you mean? There weren't any, like, all-out brawls at
Karate
your high
wars.
school, karate wars at your high school, where
I
a
was sick
grown
that
man
day.
stepped in?
Yeah, I was sick that day.
That was every day for me. I thought the show was, if anything, unrealistic in how little karate there is at the high school.
To my experience. Yeah, so you have this middle-aged guy who clearly has no friends and is trying to hang out with a bunch of 15, 14-year-olds. And it's a very funny element to season 2, him hiding in the ground and winning the little capture the flag game, him being an undercover thing at the school so that he can be there while the brawl goes out. Very narratively sensical reason why he was not in season 3, because you were in high school uninvited, beating up a bunch of kids. But his return here, I really enjoyed. You got a guy who's his neighbor, who's been in like Wolf of Wall Street and a couple other movies playing the same character, hating on him, just telling him everything that all of us are thinking, despite the fact that we like the character.
Right.
And him trying his best to get back into Cobra Kai, immediately getting outed by John Kreese. Like, we're actually training here, buddy. Go on. Like, go have a Twinkie. Goodbye. And,
especially with the Kreese they've established for this season is like, we're going to win because we only get winners, and you're a buffoon. Yeah. And so, like, as soon as he walks in, Kreese's patience wears out after 2 sentences, like one back and forth, and he's like, we're not doing this. Leave. You're a buffoon. Yeah. and you're like the exact thing that Stingray desperately wants is the thing that Kreese is like, no, you are a loser. Get out of here. That sets him up to his insecurities to go down this dark path that they're apparently using him for.
Yes, exactly. So you had the whole after party at the prom is at his house, which again is just awesome that he's that weird older guy that buys kids beer. And so they all like him just because of what he can provide, but he thinks it's all genuine friendship. So you kind of feel bad for him to a degree, all leading up to that scene where Terry Silver is unhinged. He's drunk possibly. And he's just like, he's talking to himself in this dojo, and he comes back in. And before you know where things are heading, you literally just think it's Terry Silver just beating up on a punching bag. Like the nearest person next to him, he's just going to beat the hell out of. And so him just beating this guy mercilessly while saying like, oh, you want to be Cobra Kai? And just smacking him in the face and kicking him in the groin and stomping him in the head while he's down. You're like, ooh. And when they show him in the hospital at the beginning of the final episode, it never dawned on me that there was any kind of a plot going. I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's going to come into play at some point. Somebody's going to get in trouble. And so when you get that final scene with that great orchestral score that they have behind Terry Silver whenever he's being evil that they brought back from Karate Kid 3, when that's starting to kick on and he's talking to John Kreese about shedding your weakness. And he's like, you asked me about weaknesses. Your weakness is Johnny Lawrence and my weakness is you. And then you see the blue lights and he's just like, what have you done? And then they show Stingray and I was like, no. And it was so perfect because I didn't expect it. And
Right.
it's so Terry Silver. And I was just like,
Mhm.
oh, that is so horrible and awesome in equal amounts. And yeah, the way that they framed him as this could easily just been a character that was fun for one season. You never see him again and never complain about it. Comes back in and becomes this pawn for this diabolical scheme of Terry Silver was
Who's
just awesome.
desperate enough, who's vulnerable enough, who's crazy enough that and who's a grown-up that you could have 60 or and character-wise 75-year-old man beat the crap out of a character that fits with who they are established to be, that they would actually do that. You can't have 75-year-old Vietnam vet beat up a high schooler. But we do have this one character who's desperate for attention, desperate to fit in, that is a grown man. And suddenly this plot point, you can actually pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved how they brought him back. I was when he came back in, I was like, okay, this should be fun, but not realizing that they actually had a genuine narrative reason for him to come back. And then that surprise at the end where Terry Silver's watching, like, I'll take care of the dojos, John. I'm sorry. What have you done? And he's just doing his little evil thing, like, victory.
And also going back to like why some of this played better the second time I watched it, you get to the end of episode 8 where the beatdown is taking place, and like I talked about, well, I don't know about like the characterizations, and like suddenly like one scene Terry is like saying his loyalty to Kreese to the degree that he's beating the crap out of Johnny, and the next scene he's drunk and then he's assaulting someone. Like, what's going on? Like, what's this characterization? And when you know the full understand, oh, this is part of it. This is part of his character journey of insane Silver is back. He tried to do a loyalty play. It didn't work. Silver is in full Silver. He's gone into gold mode. And he is assaulting someone for the purpose of taking down Kreese.
Yeah.
Oh, scene plays so differently when you know where it's headed.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, for the most part, is all of the individual characters. So I think we both kind of touched on it in the beginning of whether or not we think this should have been the end. I think we were both pleasantly surprised that they feel like they got a lot more gas in the tank than we would initially thought.
Well, I the caveat of I haven't seen the next 2 seasons. If the next 2 seasons are like everything feels like we're stretching it out. We show up and Mike Barnes is in Mexico City and comes like whatever. There's a bunch of things they could take this, and it does feel like we're stretching things out. Also, these kids are now 25 years old, and like you're
especially
starting
Miguel. Miguel's got 1 season or more before he's going to be Peter Parker, and it's like, hang on, dude.
There's a few of them that it's like, yeah, they're looking old. Like each season, they distinctly look more mature. Demetri also is starting to get a lot more maturity in his face. Sam, I don't think she doesn't. I haven't noticed anything like with her and some of the other ones. I haven't really, but Hawk doesn't seem like he's changed appearance too much. But some of the others, like they are not going to be believable high schoolers much longer. But so I have to see where it goes. But my feeling of like, oh man, I'm skeptical about this season. Totally wrong.
Yeah.
This season delivered.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That was my biggest worry going in, and at the end of the season, that was something I really wanted to hammer home in my spoiler-free review, was that as somebody that would have stacked all the chips on the side of the table that said season 4 is a great place to end it, end it on top, I moved all my chips over to I want to see what happens next. I don't want to end here. And with that being said, we'll talk a little bit about our predictions for the future before we wrap up, which we kind of talked about a little bit as far as like what new characters that they have, because that seems to be the thing that they do every season is like who's going to join now. Like season 1 ended with Kreese coming back. Season 2 ended with the tease for Allie. Season 3 ended with a tease for Terry Silver. I wouldn't even know if I'd call it a tease, but they certainly wrote in a line there with Terry Silver, which would be a very natural way for Mike Barnes to come back. So I would not be surprised if that's the easy play for the new character to be added in, as Mike Barnes comes in and teams up with Terry, or he takes the dojo over here and Terry's over here, and maybe they don't agree, like you said, how he's going to be now 30 years later, not a psycho teenager anymore, or maybe he will be. So we kind of covered that, and Hilary Swank, I think if they got her, we would know by now. But new alliances is something that I was kind of wanted to talk about for a moment. So we see that Chosen, which is the big tease for the final scene, where he's going to be teaming up with Daniel now. I didn't expect at all that anybody was going to actually honor this agreement, that at the end of the tournament, everybody's just going to walk away and leave their dojos. So that was not like a big narrative thing for me, where Daniel has to go to Miyagi's grave and be like, I'm supposed to pack up my gi, but I can't because they're so evil. I have to stop them. And I'm like, well, of course. So him teaming up with Chosen, I think, is going to be interesting, because I liked what we got with Chosen in season 3. And I think him giving him more secrets of Miyagi-Do that maybe he did not know, and being a force against Cobra Kai is going to be interesting. I don't really know where Johnny's going to be in all of this, because it didn't really seem like they didn't show a scene where he was saying, I'm not going to honor this. As far as with him, he's like, okay, well, I lost. Well, that so much for that. I need to go focus on Robbie now. So that might be his character arc for the next season, as he's packed up the gi and I just want to be a father to my son now and find Miguel. But I'm curious if you have any ideas on new alliances. Like there's always a constantly shifting chessboard in this show. And do you think there's going to be any big changes for season 5 that you kind of see on the horizon?
Well, everyone's always switching sides. And so then, there's something very satisfying about Chosen joining Daniel for the obvious reasons of Chosen was trying to kill him in Karate Kid 2. But they also have a shared karate lineage. And then to the Mike Barnes point of like, is this guy going to be the same person 30 years later? Chosen is the example of like, people change over 30 years. And what you did with like, you don't stand by what you like, your angry rivalries. You're a very petty person for the most part. If, all that time later, you can't get past it unless there's Johnny and Daniel. They find new reasons why they're bickering and still at each other. And, but like in the case of Chosen, they just haven't interacted in 30 years. And he's like, he plays up like he's still mad. And then he's like,
honk.
Why would I still be mad at? Like, of course we're like, I was an idiot back. But so that's just something very satisfying about that. And fun and interesting to see someone that has like a pure Okinawan take on Miyagi-Do. Yeah. That bring the tradition very much more forefront, I would imagine. But yet you think Tori, where's Tori at the end of this tournament where, wait, I didn't really win? Wait, Amanda's been really kind to me. And what does she do? And then her loyalty is to Kreese, not Silver. And wait, Kreese is going to jail. She just visits Kreese in jail one time, and her probably opinion or whatever, how that might have play out. Her opinion on things changes. So like, they end on a note of like, she probably is not terribly locked into Cobra Kai, leaving this tournament and like, oh yeah, you cheated, so I won. Oh, I trust you now.
Yeah. Same with Robbie. I don't see him having all that strong of a tether.
And then right, like his tether, like there was a little bit of tie to Kreese. But then, Kreese is gone, and then he's reconciled with Johnny, and then even the conversations with Daniel of like, what's your principle here? Like, what are you going for here? You see, like him very much kind of being this kind of free agent in the mix of where's that going to go, and then what is this situation with 30 Cobra Kai dojos or whatever it is of opening them all across the valley? What does that really look like? How does that play out?
Not to mention the fact that Silver basically promised Kreese that he's going to do something to Johnny, and so even if Johnny's out of the mix, he's like, whatever. I'm not a sensei anymore. I'm going to go onto this agreement. He's going to do something to screw up his life to bring him back in.
And so that's you kind of move all those pieces, and you can see where okay, that could be interesting. What are they going to do with this? And man, I like it with the Miguel situation. I don't know what they're thinking. The thing that's like Mike Barnes is the obvious thing that you could do that I really hope they don't do. But I don't know where that's going otherwise.
I'm with you.
At all.
I'm with you. Unless they have a little aha moment, I don't know what lesson he's going to learn, or if it's going to be a lesson that Johnny has to learn. Maybe he's getting torn to where now Robbie is there, but he also has his girlfriend saying, "You need to find my son," and now he's got to figure out how am I going to balance this? Like I finally have what I wanted, but now I'm really needed over here. That could be all that Miguel is kind of the catalyst for, is Johnny's struggle throughout the season or for the first number of episodes, but I'm with you. I like the way that they got him there, but I'm just hoping it's not going to be some silly contrived moment where it's just like, oh, his father's this guy, because of course.
Yeah, I
So
would. One other thought as we kind of think about the
mhm.
next season. I have a big fear this next season could be the worst season
Yeah.
because it's season 2 all over again. Except
Hmm.
we've played a few more things out,
Hmm.
and have they written themselves into too much of a corner to where if you've already brought Johnny and Daniel together, you've already had Robbie reconcile. Kids have learned this lesson about different things,
Hmm.
and then you're doing this big Cobra Kai takes over the valley, but who are the kids in Cobra Kai anymore? Why do we care about them? Like,
Yeah.
the
Kyler's
bull,
about the only one left with any
right?
development.
And like, but he's a one note character. Like
Hmm.
he's just a rich bully,
Hmm.
and so then you're kind of. I guess that's the other one to Tori of like, is she really going to connect all that much with Silver, another rich person?
Yeah.
Probably not. And so I have a fear that even though I really dug this season, that it's another kind of circling season, setup season, so that you have a really big slam bang payoff of season 6 as the finale or whatever.
Hmm.
But I have the ones where they're focused on some clear end, I think are the best ones.
Yeah. One
Because
and
you know
four.
the journey, 1 and 4, you know what the end point is, you know the journey that they're on, and that tournament is the payoff of that journey.
Hmm.
And then there's those middle seasons where there's struggle a little bit to find focus, and we're moving forward, expanding the trauma, but it's tough to pay off something. It's tough to hit the mark when it's unclear what the mark is.
Yeah. It's a very valid point. I haven't really thought that far ahead, but it would be. I wouldn't want the job of writing season 5 because,
Right.
like season 4 seemed like it was all the groundwork was laid. All you got to do is
Mm-hmm.
land the plane. And season 5 is like, well, you set up a lot of interesting things, but you don't have that overarching theme clear like this season was. But I think I've learned at this point that it's not a good business to doubt the show. So
Right.
I'm gonna be cautiously optimistic about where they could go with season 5. But yeah, I definitely like where everything's set up as far as where all the characters are, and Silver being fully in control. And I'm curious where things are going to go, mostly with him and Kreese, and where things are going to develop between Johnny and Daniel from here. So, any final thoughts on season 4 or anything before we wrap up?
Um, Final thoughts on it. Trying to think what I haven't said.
Yeah, I know.
And a near
We
2 hour
covered a
deal.
lot.
I guess I think best since the original, and a lot of stuff in here. I'm like, maybe that's also just the freshness of the original is the reason I put it there. But I
Hmm.
thought this season did a lot really well. It dramatically improved all the characters that needed to be dramatically improved,
Hmm.
and then delivered of the characters that were working, added great moments for them, and
Gotcha.
took them to places that I wouldn't have necessarily expected. And even as much as we've talked about all these great things, there's even more little moments and nuances to every all throughout the season that we could have touched on a little bit more of how the way things played out and the little moments that I thought the whole show or season was filled with great moments, great episodes, and story arcs that felt right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my biggest thing is it took almost every issue that I had with the show by the end of season 3 and made me eat my words because they had a much better direction to take for season 4, and it left me in a place where all the places I didn't expect to be interested or invested, I'm totally interested and invested, and all the things that I was already invested in, I still want to see more after the end of season 4, which was my biggest worry walking in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you. I might even, I don't know. I haven't done my season ranking yet, but like you, I'm like right there with 4 and 1. I'm like, damn, 4 is so good that if somebody put it as the best, I would have no argument whatsoever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's damn good. Season 4, excited for season 5. You've already touched on it, but what can we expect from your channel here soon? I know you said you got a video dropping, if not already, here in an hour or so, Cobra Kai related. What we got
Yeah.
coming, Sean?
So
Tell me what
coming,
talks about.
if you want the expand or the focused or differently organized version of the conversation we just had with my thoughts, coming in 2 hours, I'll be dropping my season 4 episodes ranked. So giving my specific thoughts, my favorite moment from every episode, but structuring it more based off the episodes rather than the characters. And then if you want another discussion, the kind of character based, I'll be ranking the characters in a few days. I'm not sure when that one will drop exactly, but that one will be tricky because it's just so many dramatically improved characters in this season. So
Absolutely.
we'll see how that plays out. But those are the two Cobra Kai things coming in the near future.
Awesome. Yeah. So, guys, as far as this channel, we've got my ranking of the seasons, which will drop tomorrow, and then my ranking of the characters on Saturday before we wrap up Dexter New Blood on Sunday. I've got a full-on season review planned for the 11th, which is 2 days after the finale, as well as a couple of rankings over the next week or so. And I also,
Me
for those
too.
that might not, yeah, there you go. For those that might
And I
not
have
known-
actually caught up a little bit more on the show. I'm almost caught up on it.
Good. I
Finally.
want to talk with you off camera about it, or on the messenger, because I have complicated feelings about this season that it seems like I'm on an island with. But yeah, so we got Dexter going to be wrapping up here soon. But I also, for those that might not know, actually launched a second channel yesterday. So all of my video game content has never really had a place as far as success on this channel, because it's so few and far between with all the movie content that those that love it show up, but it's always lower performing. So I made a whole second channel called Cody Leach Game Chamber, where all of my gaming content, reviews, rankings, maybe even some live streams in the future will be. So please check out that channel and hit the subscribe button if you are interested in gaming content. You should be able to search it, but I did a community post yesterday like 3 different times on the channel as I was launching it. So please subscribe to that. And I will be doing, maybe tomorrow, maybe this weekend, I'm going to do a video on Days Gone 2, because the developer of that game came out with some statements today regarding its quote-unquote failure when it actually succeeded that I want to talk about, as well as my thoughts on a potential sequel. So check that out if you're interested in that. But we do have Cobra Kai stuff coming in the next couple of days on this channel. If you're watching this for the first time, please hit the subscribe button, because I've reviewed all 4 seasons of Cobra Kai at this point. I've ranked it a couple of times. I'm going to be ranking it again. And I also have Sean Chandler Talks About, which is Sean's channel, the link down in the video description. So go check out his channel as well. He's done even more content on this show than I have, including the movies. He's also ranked the movies, which I'm pretty sure I ranked the movies, but you've done it a couple of times. So please subscribe to both of our channels if you enjoyed it. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next time.